All right, let's dive right in. We're opening a case file today on a document that presents a pretty wild theory. It claims to tie together consciousness, physics, and a silent, ancient war that it argues is the foundation of our entire reality. Our job here is just to unpack the claims.
So the source material for this whole explainer kicks off with this really stark warning you see right here. It basically says, look, this isn't for entertainment. This is a key designed to unlock your perception, and it makes one thing crystal clear. Once you open that door, there's no closing it again.
Now, our investigation doesn't start in some dusty old book or with ancient philosophy. No, it starts right now with a recent documented event, and it's anchored by an incredibly credible military witness who is sitting at the very heart of America's space surveillance network.
And this is our operator, Kyle Knopp. What's his job? Well, he helps tune one of the most powerful radar systems on the entire planet. This is a guy with years of experience on every single official aircraft in the U.S. inventory. To put it simply, he knows exactly what's supposed to be flying in our skies.
But what he saw hovering silently over a runway one night, well, that was not in the inventory. It was a huge, completely silent, perfect triangle. And because of his training, he didn't just see some weird light. He performed a technical analysis on the fly, identifying what he believed was a silent, gravity-bending, plasma-based propulsion system. For him, this wasn't just a sighting. It was a technical briefing from a machine that shouldn't exist.
So what do you do when you see something impossible? Well, if you're an engineer, you follow the data. Not reached out directly, peer-to-peer, to the one physicist whose supposedly impossible patents for space-time bending tech were the only scientific explanation for what he had just seen.
And the response he got back wasn't a dismissal. Now, this is what's so fascinating about this slide. It's validation. Look at the text. Dr. Pies, the guy who invented this theoretical technology, confirms in writing that the operator's story is not crazy at all. The impossible sighting was just validated by its own inventor. But it didn't stop there. As they talked more, Knopp shared his bigger picture idea, a theory linking this crazy advanced physics to an ancient cosmology. And the response from the high-level government physicist is just stunning. He says he must bend the knee to the operator's interpretation and remain silent. He wasn't arguing. According to the source, he was basically admitting defeat. And then, bam! The system slams the door shut. This email is presented as the final piece of the puzzle. The conversation was shut down by U.S. Navy Command. Why? Not because it was nonsense, but because it was going beyond what was in the public domain. And this is the event the document uses to pivot from a modern military secret to a much, much older one. This is where the whole theory just explodes in scale. That sighting, the document argues, wasn't just about some secret craft. It was a single glimpse of a battle in a silent, ancient war. A war for the control of human consciousness itself. Let's see how this builds.
Okay, so what's this Gnostic War? Now, Gnosticism was an ancient spiritual movement. This document reframes its ideas not as mythology, but as a kind of, well, an engineering analysis of our reality. It talks about a conflict against beings called the Archons. Think of them as interdimensional prison wardens who allegedly built our reality to keep us completely unaware of our true divine nature.
And this slide does a great job of showing the two teams in this supposed conflict. On one side, you've got the Archons, the wardens of the prison, and on the other, the Guardians, a kind of rebel faction that's supposedly working from the shadows to help us all wake up from the inside.
Okay, so if you're following this framework, every prison needs a central command post, right? A control tower, a warden's office that keeps an eye on the whole operation from one single strategic place.
So, the crucial question the document asks is this: where are these Archons running their planetary control system from? And right here is where the indictment makes its most explosive claim. Our own moon is that operational base. It suggests the moon isn't a natural satellite at all, but a hollow, artificial machine placed in a mathematically perfect orbit to serve as the Archon's command center.
All right, I know what you're thinking. That's a huge claim. Where's the proof? Well, the document says the proof isn't in ancient texts. It's in a very modern and very massive cover-up, the Apollo moon landings.
The evidence it presents is basically a forensic analysis of NASA's own stuff. The argument zeroes in on anomalies, like the things this slide points out, a total lack of stars in every single photo from the moon's surface, and shadows that don't seem parallel, almost as if they're being lit by multiple studio lights, not just one distant sun.
So where does all this lead? Well, the crucial point, according to the source document, is what went down in this year. It's presented as the final, absolute proof of a deliberate cover-up, of destroying evidence.
In 2009, NASA came out and officially admitted that it had accidentally erased the original high-res master tapes of what's supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement. The indictment doesn't see this as some clumsy mistake. It calls it a felony, a deliberate act to destroy the raw footage from a production set before our modern tech could properly analyze it.
But why? Why would anyone create such an elaborate prison and such a massive lie? The source proposes a motive that reframes all of human history as a kind of resource-gathering operation. And this is where the theory tries to connect directly to your life.
The core of the theory is this concept called Loosh. And it's not presented as a metaphor. It's presented as a thermodynamic reality. Our raw emotional energy, our fear, our anxiety, our suffering, is a literal product, a food source being harvested by a parasitic intelligence.
This table just lays the argument out so clearly. Look at how it re-examines systems we see every single day. The war machine? It's not just for profit. This Gnostic audit calls it a slaughterhouse for generating terror. The debt-based economy? Not just for control. It's a squeeze chute for creating constant anxiety. And the media? A feedlot, broadcasting fear 24/7.
So this Gnostic War is ultimately reframed as a battle of thermodynamics. I know entropy can sound complicated, but just think of it like a battery running out of power. This theory claims the archons are a closed, high-entropy system. Their battery is dying. To survive, they have to feed on the low-entropy life energy of an open system. And that's us, humanity. We are, in this model, their power bank.
You know, if any of this is even remotely true, the implication is pretty staggering. It means the real war isn't out there among the stars. It's an internal struggle for our own consciousness, our own energy, and maybe even our own biology.
The source even alleges a direct biological attack on what it calls our divine hardware. It claims our genetics were downgraded to enforce a short lifespan and that our pineal gland, the third eye, is under constant chemical assault to cut off our natural spiritual connection to the universe.
In the end, this explainer doesn't really offer a conclusion. The source material it's based on, it doesn't give you an answer. It ends with a personal choice that it presents directly to you, the reader. You can put the key down and go back to the comfortable prison you've always known, or you can turn it and deal with what you can't unsee. According to the source, the choice is yours.